everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a books beside my bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. It is a little bit overcast here this morning because it is going to get very hot here later, so the lighting is a little bit strange and may change during the video, but we're going to just work with it because it's a busy day of filming today. This is my reading week from the 14th until the 20th of October. I am going to be talking about 6 books in this video. There are a few other titles that are coming in a vlog at the end of the week, so there are more books going on, but you know, here we are. And in fact, I'm actually going to add 2 books on to this list. I'm just going to mention that I'm currently reading because I don't think I've talked about them before. And they're sort of ongoing projects that are not necessarily reads that I'm going to finish straight away. They're just sort of, as I finish something, I'm dipping in and reading a chapter or 2 or a section or 2. So the first one is Poems That Make Grown Women Cry. This is edited by Anthony and Ben Holden and it is 100 Women on the Words That Move Them. So this is a poetry collection and each piece of poetry is preceded by a quote or a statement or a letter from a woman who has recommended it. So far I have not yet cried, but that's because we are still with poems from a long time ago and those are not my preferred poems, but it is a really interesting read and I'm reading a lot of poems that I have not heard of before. So this is ongoing. You can kind of see how far I am into it. The other thing that I've started this week, this is a new release. This is The Year I Met My Brain by Matilda Mosley, a travel companion for adults who have just found out they have ADHD. Matilda Mosley is a social media journalist for The Guardian Australia. She's on TikTok. She's amazing. I absolutely love her. And if I'm going to listen to anyone talk about the news, it's going to be Matilda Mosley. And she was recently, in the last couple of years, diagnosed with ADHD. And then she wrote this book. It is chunky, but it is amazing. Like, it's color inside. There's fun, quirky graphics. I've only just sort of read the introduction and a little bit of the first part of the book, but very interesting, very insightful, and she has a great writing style. So I'm going to be reading this throughout the rest of the month and into November, which then brings us to the things that I read this week, starting off with Monster Mash by Latrexa, which this is entirely Izzy and Bree's fault because they did their members only sort of read along with this. This is a monster romance novella. It is what I choose and it is just bonkers. Like that's the point of these read-alongs, is just to find those really ridiculous KU titles that don't take very long to read and yet you have a good time with them. And this one was actually quite entertaining for what it was. So if you're thinking, hey, the Monster Mash is the name of a song that plays at Halloween, yeah, that's what this book is. So this is about a witch who is trying to have some kind of gathering on Halloween, but no one is turning up and she gets really sad, and so she sends out a magic pulse and she accidentally ends up bringing all of her Halloween decorations to life. And I think by the end of this book I counted up to 12 partners for her. So this is very steamy. Like, it's mostly smart. But full credit to the author, there was an attempt at a plot line through the story and, you know, that was nice. But if you can think of every single character who is named in the Monster Mash song, they are probably in this story. So, you know, if you're looking for a really entertaining, fast-paced, very steamy read, then go with this one. But just know that you'll probably have trouble keeping track of limbs because I did. I also had a bunch of review copies to read this week and I kicked it off with Venice Actually by Kelly R. Reynolds. This is the second book in her Holidays in LA series. The first one was Meet Me in Los Feliz last year and I absolutely loved that. And I was so excited to get a copy of Venice Actually because Kelly Reynolds is amazing. If you don't know her, she runs the Boobies and Newbies podcast. And I love listening to her talk about romance. Some people are far more articulate than I am on the subject of this, and so listening to her talk is always really wonderful. She has a very distinctive tone that I think flows through into her writing, and I think that's a good thing because she is very much a millennial writing millennial romance for millennials. Which is not to say that I don't think other people would enjoy it, but there is a certain way that she writes that I think just deeply appeals to me and my life experiences, and I just sit there and go, yeah, I see you characters. So this is the romance between Leighton and Killian. It's the start of the holiday period. Leighton and Killian are sort of mutual acquaintances with friends in common, and they're at a Thanksgiving party together, and Leighton kind of unloads on Killian. He's been in love with her for ages, but she sort of doesn't really think that he would ever consider her an option. She's having a really rough time. She's about to be evicted from her apartment. She doesn't want to go home for the holidays because she and her parents are just different. They just see the world differently. It's not like they're estranged, they just don't know how to connect. And Killian, who is a former professional football player from the UK, is over in the US. He's coaching a women's soccer team and he says, you know what, I've got a spare room. Come and stay with me until you get on your feet. Like, that's fine. He has an ulterior motive, but he doesn't know how it's going to play out. And the two of them end up fake engaged over the holidays because her family is coming out to visit. And the whole thing was just really funny and fun and just ultimately heartwarming because these two characters just find each other, and it was really, really lovely. They both have things they're dealing with. Killian is dealing with anxiety. He also had to stop playing professional football because he was in a car accident that basically ended his career because he was injured. And also he is not used to having family Christmases because both his parents have died. And so when her family descends on them, he actually finds it kind of endearing, and he's really helpful in helping both Leighton and her parents to understand each other a little bit more and to recognize that just because they want different things out of life doesn't necessarily mean that they don't still love each other and they don't value each other. And like that stuff was just really nice to see, because often we get estranged parents and we don't actually have any of the work done into rebuilding relationships. And let's be real, it's not like anyone had done anything bad here. Leighton is pansexual, she also has PCOS, and she is a mid-sized heroine, which was great. And some of the other tropes in here that I haven't mentioned. So it's a holiday romance. We actually go through Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year. There's forced proximity, opposites attract, only one bed, cinnamon roll. Oh, Killian is a total cinnamon roll golden retriever. Like, he's delightful. He falls first, and dirty talk. So thank you to Kelly for the review copy. I had a ball. Like, I loved it. I loved it a lot, and I cannot wait for it to come out so that I can buy a physical copy to go alongside my copy of Meet Me in Los Feliz. The next review copy I had was Hopeless by Elsie Silver. This was sent to me by Hachette, so thank you very much to them. This is the 5th book in the Chestnut Springs series, and I know I said I was going to read the other 2 books before I read this one, but I didn't because there was a drama with my copy of Powerless, which has since arrived, but there were dramas. And one day I will fill everyone in on my dramas because I actually own 2 copies of Powerless, and one of them has a hole cut out of the front cover, but I digress. Hopeless is the 5th book, and so far out of the 3, I actually think I like these 2 characters more, but I also feel like in this particular book, the characters almost felt isolated a little bit more. Like, we still have all of the other characters, we have that found family element, we have like all of that, but both these characters are very isolated, either intentionally isolating themselves or isolated by the community. And so their story felt very much them against their issues or the world or whatever, which is sometimes nice. So this is a small town romance set in Canada. Beau is back in his small town. He's dealing with PTSD. He's working on the family farm, but he doesn't really want to do it. Like, he's not finding any joy in it. And so it's making everything really difficult. He's a terrible employee, and he ends up finding solace sitting at the bar of Bailey. Bailey is a young woman. She's 22. Beau is 30, I want to say 33 or 35, somewhere around there. So it's an age gap. She has lived her entire life in the town. She's the youngest daughter in her family, and her family have a really terrible reputation in the town. And so everyone piles that on her. She's never done anything wrong, but because of her family's reputation, she is tainted by association. And she just wants to work, save enough money, and get the hell out of there. Because the only reason she got a job at this bar is because the owner is from out of town and doesn't care about her reputation. But anywhere else she tries to apply for a second job or anything like that, automatically she's judged. But despite all of this, she has a lot of compassion for other people. She recognizes that Beau is struggling, and eventually, like after the first time that he visits the bar and he's drinking to get drunk, she ends up switching him and only ever serves him tea afterwards, which I thought was really interesting. Beau becomes very protective of her, and the two end up having this bet because Beau doesn't believe that just by having her family name that Bailey is being targeted. And so he says, let's pretend to be fake engaged and we'll see if that changes things for you. And he doesn't think that it will. But of course, his family is like royalty in the town, and so it does change things, but not necessarily in the way that he thinks. This actually has quite a slow build up in it, and I enjoyed that because both of them have a lot of complex things going on in their lives and they're trying to figure it out, and the fake engagement is supposed to stay fake, but it doesn't, obviously. And I love how Beau's family just embrace Bailey. Like, they just bring her in and surround her and support her and are, telling Beau off if he's causing her distress. And I liked it. And it was nice being back with all of the same characters. I do need to go back and read the other 2 because I'm like, hang on a second, what's going on here? I will say the content warnings in this one are PTSD. There's mentions of skin grafts for burns, alcoholism, and very toxic behavior from family members. I also had a review copy of Shadows of You. This is the story of Aspen, who is a single mum with a young daughter. The story opens with a prologue when she's fleeing from her home with Katie, who is an infant. and we realize that they're being given new identities so that they can get away from some kind of situation. We get the feeling that it is a domestic violence situation, but we don't know all of the facts yet. And then in the first chapter, we jump forward, I think it's 5 years. Katie is 7-ish now. She's in school, and Aspen is just working in the town. And she and Katie have a bad habit of adopting stray animals and caring for them if they've been injured. And this is how she officially meets Roan Hartley, who is the loner of the Hartley family. So like there were parallels to this in terms of character archetypes that I was reading, but you know what, that's fine every now and then. Roan is a game warden, and he's called out to her property when there is a injured deer on the property, and she wants to help it, and he thinks she's absolutely crazy because he thinks she's going to get kicked in the head by this animal who's frightened. But eventually they're able to sedate it, and she's able to give it a place to heal. And Roan just initially just doesn't understand what's going through Aspen's head, but is charmed by Katie. Katie just calls, what does she call him? Mr. Grizzly or something like that. Like that's her nickname for him. And eventually he keeps coming back to visit them and to check on the deer and whatnot. And then of course, what we also have is there's a couple of side plots. So there is a side plot of Aspen's past coming back to haunt her, as well as animals and then eventually humans being killed. Most of the story is about these two characters connecting when Roan is very much the type of hero who keeps to himself, but Aspen is also the same. She's also trying to protect herself and Katie, and she doesn't want to let anyone know the truth about her past and her history. So I will say the content warnings in this one, skip the next minute or so if you don't want to hear the specifics of it, but this is for people who need these content warnings. There is domestic violence. It does end in murder. Aspen is also affected in this, but it was actually her sister who was involved in the domestic violence situation. And it does include stalking and harassment by the media, and so be aware of that going into it. There's also the intentional killing of animals and murder of humans. So all of those things happen in this story because small town romantic suspense. This one actually felt a lot darker than other books in the series. I will say though, I know we have conversations all the time about kids in books. I tend to avoid them. I've been really lucky this year in terms of kids in books because most of them have been pretty well written and age appropriate and not annoying. And I really liked Katie in this. She's an absolute sweetheart. She is learning to stand up to bullies and is just this little tiny dynamite powerhouse who I really, really loved reading about. And I loved her relationship with Roan. So yes, that was Shadows of You. After that, I reread Artificial Condition by Martha Wells. My audiobook came through. This is the graphic audio, and this was fantastic. This is sci-fi. It is novella length. Murderbot has basically left the humans who helped to free it in the first book and has decided to just travel around for a bit and try and figure out what's going on, but at the same time is dodging all of the media talking about it. And it ends up sort of escaping on Art, who is a sentient bot spaceship who is just hilarious and is basically a research transport, which Murderbot calls the arsehole Murderbot transport, hence Art. And they end up helping a group of scientists whose data had been stolen by the company that they were working for. Murderbot is using this as an excuse to get to a particular planet in order to find out what happened in their own history. But of course, they're a good Murderbot and they actually end up helping out these scientists as well. Like, it's been nice going back and revisiting these stories because I remembered all of the plots, but like the little details I haven't, and having it in a graphic audio is just so nice. Lots of sound effects, lots of things going on. It's really good. And then the last book that I read this week was Fate's Edge by Ilona Andrews for the Ilona Andrews read along that I'm doing with Megan, Izzy and Heather. I was always planning on reading it the week before the readathon, but I kept ending up pushing it back and back and back because I was like, last time I totally forgot everything. So I'm like, I need to read it as close to the readathon date as I can. But the one thing that I've noticed about this particular series by Ilona Andrews is it has really long chapters and it takes me a long time to get through them. Like, they're not overly long, it's less than 400 pages, but it does take a while to sort of get through the content. Not necessarily in a bad way, I think it's just a different way of writing. I don't speed through them as quickly as I do other books. This is the third book in the Edge series and it's Cowles series. So it's very interesting because I think what happened is this series must have originally been starting out as individual romances, but the second, third and fourth books in the series are following family members from a particular family. So it's almost like it started out as individual, but we've suddenly entered into sort of a family dynamic and all of them weave together, which is really nice. So we met Keldar in the previous book. He is Ceresa's cousin. He is a bit of a con artist. He's very charming, and he is able to use his magic to imbue bets in his favor. And Audrey is the daughter of con artists, but she is trying to escape her past. She has a really bad relationship with her family, and she gets drawn into this one last job to try and free herself from her family, and they screw her over royally. And so she ends up in Keldar's sights, and the two have to go and track down this item that she and her family stole because they don't want the Hand getting a hold of it because they're going to use it for nefarious purposes, etc. George and Jack and Gaston are all involved in this. Jack and George stow away on Keldar's wyvern in order to sort of get away from a situation that's going on at home and end up involved in everything. And it's sort of the first time that these two have really been heavily involved in fighting, and so you can really see where the evolution of their characters have come from this book. We begin to see how all of the characters in this world connect, and like it was really interesting. Like I was deeply invested in what was going on. I totally felt for Jack in this one, who is still trying to figure out his place as a shifter. He really doesn't know where he fits, but also George, who is incredibly intelligent and has a lot of magic, but is dealing with a lot and then trying to then fit into a society that doesn't want to accept him because they're now living in the weird, so that's all the wealthy blue blood magic people, but he's originally from the Edge, so they don't see him as one of them. And then Calder and Audrey's relationship was just funny because they're both con artists, so she doesn't trust him as far as she could throw him, and he has never seen himself as the settling down type until she basically says no. She confronts him and gives him the truth and says, you think that this is a game and I don't know whether or not I can trust you, and in fact I know I can't trust you with my heart because we're the same. I know you, I know exactly what's going through your head, and it forces him to think about it, and the whole thing was just really entertaining and fun. And I'll be talking more about that in the live show, which I'll leave linked on the screen because it'll be done by the time this video goes up. All right, that's it from me. In the comments, I'd love to know if you have read any of these books or if you're planning on picking them up. Otherwise, feel free to share something that you have been reading and enjoying this week. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a deer emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you're on the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.